It's called Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over, and that's kind of the law here in Florida and pretty much anywhere else in the U.S. So we've got Deputy Shelley here to kind of talk about the program and what it's about and things that you guys might need to know. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So can you tell us a little bit about the program, what it involves?
The Drive Sober, Get Pulled Over program was implemented nationwide by ECSO, and the Florida Department of Transportation picked that up and continues to run with it to try to alleviate the deaths that we're seeing around the major holidays.
And it's underway right now, right?
It is. It ends September 3rd.
Okay. And what will you be doing to step up patrols during this time?
During this time, we have increased patrols with our DUI units. We have 3 that are specifically trained for DUI enforcement. We also have all of our patrol officers are notified of the campaign, and anytime they stop somebody that may possibly be under the influence, they can contact us at any time.
So under the influence doesn't always mean alcohol.
That's correct. It can be alcohol, it can be prescription medication, it can be cough medicine, it can be a number of things that they can take. It can also be illicit drugs.
And that's interesting. You said prescription medication, because sometimes you're not feeling well, you go to the doctor, you get that prescribed to you, and you don't necessarily think you're driving under the influence, but you are.
That's correct. Always check your prescription bottles. It'll say on there that it may cause drowsiness. If that's on there, that's a good sign of I probably shouldn't take it and drive.
And there's a lot of social media push to this campaign as well. Can you talk about that?
There's a lot of it. Florida Department of Transportation has a law enforcement liaison that put out information, and there's a lot of resources involved in it, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, a lot of them. I couldn't even name off all of them that they run.
It's a pretty big campaign. What are some statistics to it whenever we run these?
The latest statistics that we have are based a few years ago, and we're still averaging about 10,000 alcohol and drug-related crashes and fatalities per year.
How important is it to have something like this, especially we're wrapping up summer, so I mean it's a big deal to kind of have this program.
It is. The Labor Day holiday is one of the most traveled holidays outside of, I believe, Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. And it's the end of summer. The beginning and the ending of summer are big pushes for that, and we want summer safety. We want the 100 days of summer to be some of the safest times at our beaches and in our communities.
And sometimes people, you're at the bar, you're having a drink. How much is too much? I mean, some people will say, oh, it takes me 6, and some people are like 1, I'm done. What's your advice?
It depends on every person individually. A person that drinks all the time, their tolerance will be different. For a person like me that doesn't drink very often, it may be 1. It may change, but everybody's body absorbs alcohol at a different rate.
The best advice would probably be call Lyft or an Uber if you've been drinking at all.
That's absolutely right. Having a plan is the most important thing. Just planning ahead is one of the big things of being a responsible adult.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the program?
The program is still ongoing. It's going to continue every year. It's a great program funded by the Department of Transportation and NHTSA. We would like to see 0 fatalities involving alcohol and drug-related deaths.
And if somebody is driving out on the roads and they think they see somebody driving impaired, what should they do? They
can try to get us a vehicle description. A tag is always good on the vehicle. And where you're at. Knowing where you're at is important, because our 911 system may shift somebody from the sheriff's office to the city, to the highway patrol, depending on where you're at jurisdictional-wise. Right. But always following an impaired driver, do not get involved in it. Stay back far enough to keep you and your family safe, but please provide us any information that you can.
Thank you
so much for joining us. We appreciate
it.
And remember, drive sober or get pulled over. You can always call an Uber, Lyft, or taxi if you have been drinking, and just stay safe during the holiday weekend.
The Escambia County Sheriff's Office announced yesterday the termination of the clean sweep operations, which have been going on in Escambia County for about 8 years. Some of you may recall in 2009, one of the forward-leaning things that we did upon my assumption as Sheriff of Escambia County is we took some programs that had worked just terrifically in other locations. New York City had used this, Chicago had used it at one time. And it was a program to where we partner with other county agencies and go to the communities, and in conjunction with cleaning up a neighborhood, that's why they call them clean sweeps, we would pick up trash in many of the neighborhoods that couldn't afford to have extra pickups. But in addition to that, we set up traffic control points, we did warrant sweeps. It was a whole combination of things. No one likes this program better than your sheriff. But so again, for probably about at least the 20th time now, let me once again attempt to explain to the citizens who are asking these questions why these drawdowns at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office are occurring. As you well know, we're embroiled in a budget battle with the Board of County Commissioners. Make no secret of that. Anything that we're doing is a part of public record. I encourage all of you to look for those records. And so the assumption now is being made that when we cancel clean sweeps, we can now take that money and apply it to deputy raises, and so therefore we don't have a budget problem. Well, these observations and answers, if you will, are coming not only from our county commissioners, but now unfortunately citizens who have no clear and complete understanding of what the situation really is and what's occurring. So again, for the umpteenth time, I will attempt to explain it again. This is not about eliminating manpower positions. It's about backfilling manpower positions that are leaving. A clean sweep operation is conducted by those personnel. We pay overtime for this. We actually marshal forces and send them for this operation on this particular day of the month, taking them from other law enforcement duties. For that entire day, they're scheduled to work a clean sweep operation. We're required, when we call officers in from off time, to pay overtime for those officers. And so we're pulling from neighborhoods throughout Escambia County officers that would normally be on other duties and officers that are off duty who would like to come in and make off-duty pay to work a clean sweep operation. So by suspending those operations, it does not save any manpower. It actually saves some money, meaning that we don't have to pay the overtime. But now these officers are not going to be confined to a clean sweep operation, but are going to maintain their duties. The situation is even made worse by this. We don't have the officers to fill all the positions that we currently have. Why? Because they've been leaving over the last several years due to the low pay. So I have manpower positions that I cannot fill because of the pay status. I have said many, many times, if by some magic today the Board of County Commissioners approved our budget as submitted, it would be a year to a year and a half before we would be able to recruit, train, and field those officers. The manpower situation at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office is that critical. So for those of you who are lamenting clean sweeps, thinking that this is a ploy or it's something that we're doing to get back at someone, it is a clear-eyed, logical management decision that we are making to address the situation on the ground as it is. Just like our decision with the School Resource Officer Program. We've met with the superintendent of schools and we've drawn down the SROs with the caveat and understanding that if the manpower situation does not better itself, we may have to cancel the SRO program. One of the things that we discussed with the superintendent was that potential or eventuality which may occur. He has the authority by statute to form his own police force, if you will, and we would certainly work with him in doing that. But again, ladies and gentlemen, is it something that we want to do? The answer is no. But we cannot continue with our existing budget at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. That is a thing that we cannot seem to make clear to the Board of County Commissioners. Timothy asked a question if we could find other sources to generate revenue to support the Escambia County Sheriff's budget. Timothy, one of the issues that you run into with that is the hiring of officers, as you can well imagine, has to be from a source of funding that's called recurring funds, meaning property taxes. Every year we all have to pay a certain amount of taxes. That allows us to budget out in the years with a high degree of assurance that, again, there will be a certain amount of money there to make employee salaries and benefits happen. We cannot use non-recurring funds for the hiring of deputies. As you can well imagine, there's been some talk about, well, why doesn't the sheriff use the trust fund money to hire deputies or to backfill the SRO program? The reason being, Timothy, is quite possibly this year we would have $500,000 in that fund, and we'd go out here and hire up a bunch of deputies and put them on duty, and then next year that fund drops to $50,000. And so what would I have to do in that case? Well, I'd have to terminate officers, or suspend them, if you will, until such time that we get the money for that. So the hiring of officers is based upon primarily exclusively ad valorem taxes, which are property taxes. The millage rate that you pay, dependent upon the property that you own, and this also applies to commercial property, by the way, can be forecast every year through the tax appraiser and property appraiser's office to the Board of County Commissioners, so they can project revenues for the following year, and the budget is formulated based upon that. All the other pots of money, as they're referred to, whether it's a federal grant, state grants in many instances, etc., can be used to backfill certain programs, but they can't be used for budgeting purposes in the out years. So while that's a wonderful idea, I can tell you that the Board of County Commissioners saw fit to raise the gas tax by 4 cents at one point to fund ECAT to make it solvent. They also raised the fire department and EMS budget from $6 to $16 million through MSBU increase. But for some reason, they're adamant about not supporting the sheriff's office. Sean asked the question if starting deputies' pay will go from about $32,700, $32,900, depending upon background and experience, to $45,000. Well, the short, quick answer, Sean, is no, it will not. The pay study that the county commissioned, the Board of County Commissioners commissioned a pay study. We're starting to get it back in dribs and drabs. We've got a couple of the chapters back that dealt specifically with the sheriff's office, law enforcement, corrections, etc. Of course, the county runs corrections. I believe the recommendation for starting salary was around $41,300. Would that help with recruiting and retention? Well, of course it would, Sean. Unfortunately, the county's already told us that they will not be implementing the pay study this year, nor will the deputies receive a 3% pay raise. And oh, by the way, they'll not receive it next year. So therein lies the problem that we have in quote-unquote negotiating with the Board of County Commissioners. I love it when commissioners from the dais, which is, they're a little bit like Supreme Court justices, they sit up there and make edicts to everyone. In case you're wondering, Sean, why I don't address the county commissioners for that reason. There isn't any negotiation or dialogue. Those sorts of statements are made, and then you're left to kind of stand there and say, well, I want to plead my case. And, as they've said, this is what it is. There's no pay study this year that we're going to consider in readjusting pay scales. There's going to be no 3% pay raise, not this year, Sheriff, but not next year. So, I love it when a county commissioner, actually I think there was more than one, Commissioner May made this statement, and I believe Commissioner Robinson also, that, I wish the sheriff was here, number one, and if you paint me in the corner, then I'm just going to do this. Who was painted in the corner? You made the edict to us that, this is, Sheriff, what you're going to live with. So I have no alternative but to prepare the budget and go see the governor and his staff in Tallahassee, which, to be quite honest with you, Sean, I'm looking very forward to. I hope we go to Tallahassee. We need a different set of eyes to take a look at this. What's frustrating for us is, again, over the 8.5 years I've been in office, we in fact have presented these issues to the Board of County Commissioners. We have identified year after year the pay disparity that is only growing in Escambia County. So let me encapsulate it for you real quick. Santa Rosa now starts at $35,000. Their Board of County Commissioners just approved a 10% raise for Santa Rosa deputies. Go one more county over to Okaloosa County. Their starting salary now is $37,500, as is the county next to them, Walton County, is $37,500. Sheriff Ashley, again, just got his Board of County Commissioners, again, to support the sheriff and law enforcement to do an ad valorem tax increase, which again is something in Escambia County that our county commissioners will not even discuss. What they're not telling you is that since 2003, the ad valorem taxes have been continually rolled back. They were 8.7 millage rate. It's now down to 6.6. And when they tell you about how large the sheriff's budget is, that it's the majority of the budgets in Escambia County, that's another sleight of hand. The county commission's budget this year is over $450,000. I think it's right at $470,000. Now, we get about $55,000 out of that, or excuse me, $55 million out of that. Now, the rest of that is controlled by the county commission. Why? Because number one, they make that budget allocation to the sheriff after we submit what we believe our requirements to be. They make that dictate. They tell us out of the whole county budget what we're going to get. And then out of that also comes the other constitutional, supervisor of election, tax appraiser, tax collector, etc., clerk of the court. So when they say that the sheriff's the largest budget, well, when you take all of that out, there's still, over $350 million. Now, who controls that budget? Not the sheriff, not the clerk of the court, not the tax appraiser, tax collector, nor supervisor of elections. So who controls that $350 million? Answer, your Board of County Commissioners. So for them to say that the sheriff's budget is the largest budget in the county, I'm not sure who's doing their accounting, but you might want to change CPAs, because I think even the average citizen understands that that's just not true. So what we're going to do is, number one, we've been told you're not going to get that salary up to $41,000. By the way, those salaries also go up to sergeants should be making $62,000, $63,000, and our lieutenants should be making $83,000. And that, by the way, is commensurate with the Pensacola Police Department and other like-sized law enforcement agencies in the state of Florida. So, Sean, we're getting an answer from the County Commission that goes a little bit like this. Sheriff, we understand, and it's a documented fact, that your agency went 7 years without any pay raises. Now, they'll tell you how wonderful they are because over the last 4 years, they've given us 3% pay raises. Those 3% pay raises were based upon, again, a base salary of $32,000 starting, not on $41,000. So, number one, that's your first fallacy. Second one is your first pay raise at 3% was to do an adjustment for the employee requirement to give to the Florida retirement system. As you recall, Governor Scott and the legislature mandated that employees would now have to contribute an additional 3% to their retirement system out of their total pay. So had they not passed that first pay raise, our officers and the rest of county employees would have actually been making 3% less than they were making before that was mandated. So really, we've only had 3 years of 3% pay raises. And by the way, the sheriff's budget, since I've been sheriff, since 2008 to present day, has increased a whopping 1% per year. Now, 1% per year. And by the way, we'll produce that graph for you if you'd like to see it. I didn't produce the graph. The Board of County Commissioners' Chief Financial Officer produced that graph. So be very careful, Sean, on what you're hearing about the budget issues. I will tell you we have a righteous cause, because for you to tell me that 7 years without pay, and oh, by the way, Sheriff, it's going to end up being at least 9, because this year and next year, you're not going to get any pay raises either. My question back to the County Commission is, then what's the fix? There's a part two, I would assume, to this discussion and statement. What's your fix? That we just live with this condition? That's a little bit like, me going to the doctor and the doctor saying, hey, you have a terminal disease. And I say, well, what's the prognosis for treatment? And the doctor says, we don't have one. So I just go off and die. That's not going to happen during this administration. We look forward to going to Tallahassee. I have a question from a county commissioner. I will answer this question because all county commissioners were provided with this information. The reason why I preface the answer to this question is because there in Florida we have what's referred to as sunshine laws, and citizens who are not a part of county government, or I should say government period, in the state of Florida are probably not aware that discussions amongst elected officials are tightly controlled and restricted. That is, these laws were passed to keep elected officials from cutting side deals, if you will. And that's why the title of the law is called the Sunshine Law, meaning that all government business must be conducted in the sunshine. Meaning if you're going to have a discussion about a project or a program involving public funds or the letting of contracts or sometimes even the enforcement of certain things, it has to be a full and open public discussion. Now, this, in fact, has been discussed, I believe, to the extent that it's all right to go on and identify the commissioner and to give the commissioner an answer on tape because this statute that I'm going to refer to was also provided to all commissioners and to the county administrator. Commissioner Jeff Bergosh makes an observation, if you will, actually a statement that says that the sheriff could offset his budget for the school resource officer program by factoring in the law enforcement trust fund monies, meaning those monies that we get from drug forfeitures, to offset the cost of the SROs. Well, Commissioner, we sent you this statute. We have also got inquiries into the Attorney General's office to get a ruling on this. I understand your confusion at this point because in the initial reading of that statute, it states that what LET funds can be used for. Number one, they can't be used for normal law enforcement functions. But it does give a caveat on school resource officer programs. Now, we believe programs, leads us to believe that there are brochures and there are, audiovisual aids that SROs may do, etc. The AGO has come back with some recent opinions saying, no, you can actually fund SRO positions. That was to help smaller law enforcement agencies that, again, didn't have enough funding for the school resource officer programs. As you're well aware, being a prior member of the school board, the school system pays for half of the SROs, and then the county picks up the other half for the cost of the SROs that are currently assigned to the schools. So, I want to reemphasize to everybody, money is not the issue with the manning of the schools. I'll repeat this until enough people finally listen and get it through their heads that we have a manpower issue. Manpower issue. If you gave us our full funding today, we still can't man all of those positions that need manning. Why? Because this attrition rate that we've been facing over years in our discussions with the county commission to try to get our budget up to the point to retain officers has been ignored year after year after year. So we're now at a point to where we're having to take officers out of non-statutorily mandated positions. I would remind Commissioner Bergosh and everyone else, school resource officers are not mandated by statute. Patrol officers and the functions they perform are. And oh, by the way, school resource officers are in fact, again, certified deputies. So the conundrum right now with the AGO's office is, are you making a special category of deputies that are called school resource officers? Our belief is they are not. Why? Because I must have the ability to take a deputy and assign a deputy anywhere in Escambia County to any duties that, again, are outlined by Florida statute. The further conundrum comes with this statute that I have right here. And again, we provided a copy to Commissioner Bergosh. But again, we tend to ignore things that don't support our particular position. The Florida statute is 932.7055, and I would direct everybody's attention to parenthetical or parens 9, which is the very last part of the statute. And it reads, neither the law enforcement agency nor the entity having budgetary control over the law enforcement agency, that is the Board of County Commissioners, shall anticipate future forfeitures or proceeds therefrom in the adoption and approval of the budget for the law enforcement agency. Now, what that means, Commissioner Bergosh and everyone else on the Board of County Commissioners and the citizens of Escambia County, is I cannot take forfeiture funds, which I cannot forecast every year because we don't know what that number is going to be. It's solely dependent upon drug operations, the cash that we seize, and any other assets that are engaged in criminal activity. I can't tell you from year to year what that number will be. That's why the statute clearly states, not only to us, but to the Board of County Commissioners, that those funds and monies will not be considered in the formulation of a sheriff's budget. If I do so, I'm in violation of the Florida statute. Some may choose to do that. I will choose not. Sean calls and makes a statement and or question and obviously upset about the clean sweep operations being stopped and recommends that we, don't do funeral escorts or don't send 3 officers, when we have a traffic stop. Well, Sean, number one, clean sweeps were stopped because, again, of a manpower/budgetary issue, not because we wanted to. We started clean sweeps under my administration. We were about 6 months in. It was a program started in New York City where the citizens got together and cleaned up a square block, and then it became 2 blocks, 3 blocks, and I think they ended up doing about an 8 square block area. And it was part of a Take Back Our Neighborhood program where citizens got out and got together collectively and cleaned up the neighborhood and had old buildings torn down, etc. And that's what we've endeavored to do here for the last 8.5 years. So no one is more disheartened by this budget issue and having to cut back on programs that we've had in place for the last 8.5 years, which have proven to be very, very successful. Clean sweep being one of them. But we just don't have the manpower to continue with those. You probably don't know, but the sworn officers that participate in that program, many of them are in an off-duty overtime status, and we have to pull from officers, again, not on duty, that are patrolling their normal duties. We take officers that are working either administration or, again, are currently serving their couple of days off, their routine duty schedule, and they come in and work overtime and get paid overtime money to work the clean sweeps. It's not only not having the money now to pay for the overtime, if you will, we don't have enough officers to work that many details. As I tell folks, Probably the best way to describe it is I have 10 positions that I have to fill and I only have 7 officers. You know, I can rotate that around and, you know, but I'm never going to be able to cover all 10 positions with 7 officers, no matter how much overtime I work. And so that's the situation we are with, again, throttling back on the clean sweeps. Your observation about funeral escorts, those 2 are stopping effective October the 1st. So that is also fallen to the manpower budget acts, if you will. We cannot continue to do those. The traffic unit will be pulled back, dispersed into regular patrol duties and, yes, traffic control duties, but not tied up doing funeral escorts. And so, you know, we have done those things that you recommended. And Sean, the last part of your question involved, you know, why 3 units for a traffic stop? Well, again, Sean, you know, I hope your question wasn't snarky, even though it came across a little bit. And here's why. You don't know why that traffic stop was effected. You know, that may have been a stop on a be on the lookout order with someone who's driving that vehicle that is suspected to be armed and dangerous. The officer could have approached the vehicle and someone was rifling inside their console or inside the glove compartment, or they had refused to exit the vehicle. And that's why additional officers respond to that scene. Trust me, we responded last year to over 247,000 calls for service. Our officers have plenty to do without, you know, driving around and wanting to respond to one officer's call. I can tell you those officers that responded to that scene, if you'd have looked in their vehicle, they had CAD calls backed up that they should have been going to. They would not have not gone to those calls to just respond to a simple traffic stop. JC has asked a question about removing property from a rental or leased dwelling, you know, house, condo, etc. JC, you need to go to the clerk of the court. They have a landlord-tenant section that will give you a checklist on all of those things that you need to follow to handle this appropriately and legally. Remember, you can also email your questions and ask the sheriff at escambiaso.com. We'll be back next week right here on Blab TV Tuesday night at 8 p.m.